Hi, everyone, from me, Brent Graham of Goodforthegame.co.za. It's 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning, not our usual time, but thanks very much to my guest, Nathan Mossman, for fitting me in because we've got something on tonight and I wouldn't have been able to do the show then. Look out for the URC show. We'll do that sometime on Friday. I haven't really got around to planning that yet, but we'll definitely have a look at that before the weekend gets going. But of course, this show is all about Super Rugby, and who better to talk to than the man based in Auckland himself, the Mossman. Nathan, great to have you back on the show, and thanks for making a plan to join me this morning.
Yeah, no worries. And I sorted out my technical issues as well, which it turns out I just accidentally hit the button which turns the camera off. And
okay.
And I'm restarting and I'm trying all these settings, and yeah, it's literally just a button. And the sad thing about it is it's not the first time that I've done that, and I should really have remembered. But anyway.
It's amazing how sometimes the technical things are actually so simple, but could often take a real time to figure out. But anyway, we've got a big weekend of Super Rugby. Just generally speaking, have you got your money down already? Did you get a few of the early lines, or are you still waiting to make your move?
Yeah, a little bit. It's been a bit of a strange one so far this week. So the last 2 weeks I was heavily involved, had bets on all 10 games, and I had them on by this point in the week. This week is not shaping up that way, just because there's sort of a few kind of unusual things and some things I got at the back of my mind. So yeah, it's been sort of quite clear cut over the last 2 weeks. So last week I was on 4 out of the 5 favorites, and the week before I was on 4 out of the 5 dogs. So yeah, it was kind of swings and roundabouts. But yeah, this week's it's been a bit of a strange one. So we'll see how things play out.
Excellent. Well, I enjoy this comment from Shazadud. He's coming to us on Twitter, and a reminder to those that do watch on Twitter, because our Twitter audience has actually grown to the point where it's getting bigger than the YouTube audience now. If you make comments on Twitter, we can show them here on the show. And he's saying, what a treat for us in Australia and New Zealand to have this on at a normal hour. Yeah, enjoy that, and hopefully we'll get a few Australian and New Zealand viewers today. Right, Nathan, let's get into the action. We've got the first game on Friday. The games are spread over 3 days. And we've got Moana Pasifika up against the Chiefs. This is 8:05 on a Saturday morning, South African time. And yeah, this is one where we have had quite big betting movement. I'm not sure what it opened up there. The first I saw was Chiefs minus 12.5. It's now up to 18.5. And certainly, well, the bookmakers at least are expecting a big win, Nathan. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, this was one where I did get involved early in. These are obviously a group chat you and I are on. I did tip this early because I did look at the draw and see that the Chiefs are on a bye next week. So I figured they would go strong. And so I was willing to put the money down on the Chiefs early. As it turns out, when the teams have come out, I think obviously the first immediate talking point is that there was no Artie. And I would say that accounted for a lot of the initial line movement. And probably quite rightly. But the funny thing about it is it's also not the strongest Chiefs team that they put out there as well. So, I could understand the enthusiasm for the Chiefs initially. But I did think that's possibly gone a little bit too far. I mean, there are a couple of factors here. So one is that it's not a true home game for Moana. It was supposed to be played in the islands. I think it was going to be in Tonga, but that fell through for whatever reason. I think it was an infrastructure problem. So this game is in Pukekohe, which, to be honest, it's probably as close to to Hamilton as it is to Moana's home base. So I suspect no real home advantage for Moana here. There'd probably be a lot of Chiefs fans that live in the area, and as I said, a pretty short drive up State Highway 1 from Hamilton to get to Puke from there. So no real home advantage. So yeah, as I said, could see the enthusiasm for the Chiefs, but there's plenty missing for the Chiefs as well. So for me, it started to get a little bit far, and I actually played back a little bit of this at 19.5, which I thought was, really getting up there. And the thing about Moana is, yes, missing Artie, obviously, but they actually came through without him, like in the second half of that Hurricanes game. And the real find here is Patrick Pellegrini. I think I've got a real one there. I don't know where this guy's been, but everything he did, every touch he had, was real class. And a big step up, I think, from what we have had with a kind of been rolling out Jackson Garden Bishop. So loving what I'm seeing from him, and obviously very keen to see him have another run out and how he goes. So yeah, as I said, I could understand the enthusiasm for the Chiefs, but at that kind of 18.5, 19.5 mark, which is what I've seen, I wouldn't be getting involved there.
Yeah, I must admit, I agree with your logic on that. It is starting to feel a little bit big there. Just a quick comment on the points line here, 67.5. I did look at conditions, although I must double check that I looked at conditions in the right venue because of the change. But I think it's sort of warm but fairly clear conditions. Have you seen anything there?
Well, I mean, it's just down the road from here. So, if there's anything like the way things are at the moment, we have been getting a little bit of rain. It's a change of seasons, but I need to go and have a look at the weather forecast. But it's not hard to see this being a high scoring one.
Yeah, agree with that. Just interesting. We got Reverend coming in saying evening. He's normally greeting us with a good morning, and we got Mark who normally says good night, saying good morning. The three people who've commented on the show so far, all from Australia, New Zealand, or Ireland. Any South Africans watching the show, let us know that you're out there. I guess South Africa's not at work at the moment. For the Irish, it's probably a little bit before the workday starts. But excellent. Let's move on to the next game. This, of course, is the Highlanders against the Reds. This is Saturday, South Africa. It's an early start. It's 5:35 on Saturday morning, and we've got a handicap here of Highlanders -4.5. And if I'm not mistaken, the cap has shifted towards the Highlanders this week, which I'm going to say surprises me a little bit, Nathan.
It does surprise, but at the same time, I think what's happened is there are a few guys missing for the Reds. Tate McDermott's out, obviously. I think Fraser McReight we knew would be out. Fezler, the hooker, is out. So there are a few missing. The Highlanders, I'm just unconvinced, to be honest, that they're any better, perhaps, than they've been over the past couple of years. I think there was a lot of optimism after the first game, and some thoughts that perhaps Jamie Joseph had worked a little bit of magic. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, I was on the opposite side to you in last week's game. You watched it. What did you make of the Highlanders?
Yeah, I thought once again, just early in the game, a couple of their tries, as I recall, they were very much the sort of opportunist against around a play type of tries. But at the end of the day, I thought they absolutely, they did blow the win a little bit. They had a kick which would have given them the lead. And ultimately, they just look like one of those sides that are going to always struggle to get the job done for me. They had their opportunities. I thought both sides, I mean, I would certainly not say that the Hurricanes didn't deserve to win that either, because they certainly, for me, for most of the game, were the better side. But I thought, Highlanders just blew their chances at the end. Even that, I think, was it that the game, Nathan, where the guy went for the speculative drop goal from like his 10-meter line?
Yeah, that's right.
And no penalty advantage or anything like that. I mean, that was just brain dead, if you ask me. I mean, your chances of landing that drop goal are so slim. I mean, they were holding the ball, no problem. The Hurricanes obviously were trying not to concede a penalty. But, the longer you hold the ball, eventually they're going to concede a penalty, so that would have been the way to go. So that was my views. But what did you make of that? You were probably delighted to see him lining up a drop goal.
I think it's fair to say, although obviously the heart's in the mouth what was going over. I mean, as it turns out, because I did have an early number, which was on the Hurricanes at +1.5, so +1.5 and the money line. So as it turns out, it wouldn't have made a huge difference.
Okay, you would have been okay. Yeah, you would have been okay.
I would have been okay, but I would have probably lost half of it because I think I was kind of split. But I think we talked last week, or raised the fact that a lot of their points were coming against a run of play, and it was kind of ridiculous, like how it played out in this game. It was exactly the same, like another 95-meter intercept, completely against a run of play, and then the second try was they won a penalty, like deep in kind of their own territory, took the quick tap, kicked it down the other end of the field, and then just chased it all the way, got a nice bounce, and Faliafunga scored. So again, like just a whole lot of luck involved in a lot of their scores, and that's not sustainable in the long run. And as I said, just not convinced that they're actually very good, to be honest. The other takeaway that I had from that game was the Hurricanes were pressuring the breakdown. It seemed like every time, there was potential for a turnover. And I know part of that is that, Karifi's, like a real exponent of that. But the flip side is that I just didn't see the Highlanders pressuring the breakdown. They didn't look likely a lot of the time to turn it over. Perhaps the only guy that does is Tavitava Nawai, and he's shifted in this game, out to the wing from where he was playing in number 12. So, theoretically, probably a little bit less involved in some of those, contact areas and the ability to sort of influence it from there. So, yeah, look, I can understand why that line has moved with the Reds missing a few. But to be honest, I think this game is a coin flip that the Reds can easily win. And at plus 4.5, I'd be looking towards the Reds.
Yeah, I'm also leaning towards the Reds in that game. Points here is 55.5. This game is, of course, under the roof, so conditions will be good. But Nathan, my gut feel on this is that points line looks fairly well set for this game. Do you see any value there?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think it probably is well set. There's always a temptation, I think, under the roof to think that it's going to turn into some shootout. But like we saw in the last game, that it's just not how things play out. And I've got pretty strong recollections of last year where the Highlanders were an under team because they were able to defend fairly well and hold on to the ball for quite long periods of time, but just couldn't finish, and outside of these long range, fluke tries, that's kind of what we're seeing again.
Yeah, makes 100% sense. I remember I used to have that feeling about the Force many years ago. These days, the Force are quite a high scoring team, but they used to be able to hold the ball, but just never finish, and that definitely lends itself to unders. Game of the weekend, there's no doubt about it, at Eden Park. Blues up against the Crusaders. This game, well, it's been pretty tight all week in the betting, but the Blues did open slight underdogs here in South Africa. I'm talking about plus half a point. And I see they've edged to minus half a point, which I also find quite interesting, although I did price the Blues as, I think, about 2-point favorites for this one. I didn't actually expect, when I saw the opening Crusaders favorites, I kind of expected it, if anything, to maybe move the other way. First of all, you're looking forward to this one, Nathan? Are you going to the ground? And secondly, your thoughts on the betting?
Yeah, I sadly I won't be able to get there for this one, but it would be a good one. I've actually been to this fixture in past years. I think it was year before last where the Blues were quite heavy favourites and the Crusaders upset them in this fixture at Eden Park. So I totally agree. Like, this is probably one of the surprising kind of moves of the week. Like, I sort of capped this off the top of my head at minus 1.5, and then when I did my projections, I had the Blues sort of winning by 2, so right in that ballpark. But I thought I would be a bit of an outlier. I thought that the Crusaders opening as favourites was not surprising, and they would probably stay that way. So to see that move it's kind of interesting. It does suggest that it's a quote unquote sort of sharp move to go in that direction, because I think the perception would be that the Crusaders are the better team this year, at least anyway. And that would have been sort of driving some of the betting, but as it turns out, that hasn't happened. And I think one thing I read is that the Crusaders haven't won an away game under Penny, so since the start of last year. Right. So that could be playing into this in terms of team selection. So Perifeta in at 10. So whether that is driving it, Hoskins Tutu back. I think that's clearly a plus. But other than that, there are a few other guys that are missing, Tumafasi, for example. So yeah, it's definitely not something that I can see being clearly driven by team selection, because in my mind that it doesn't really make sense. But the Blues, I think, against the Chiefs, and this is as someone who was on the Chiefs at the time, you just realise that they, despite their struggles this year, they're just such a difficult team to put away. And that they hang around. Any team that has kind of Mark Talia in it and Caden Clark is always going to be a danger. And I just think they probably deserve a bit more respect than perhaps what they've been getting, and perhaps that's what this line is showing. So I did take a bit of the Blues at the plus 1.5, but to be honest, I don't love it. There's some bets that you feel really good about and some that you don't. And this is probably one of those things. I do wonder, and as I said, without, this is kind of speculative, but with Perifeta at 10, and he's more of someone who would challenge the line, compared to a Plummer, and you've got the new sort of young guy at 12 who people have commented on his distribution, that if they can get those outsides involved, Rieko Ioane, Clark, Talia, get those guys involved, because that's obviously a massive strength of the Blues. Then that's going to be a big plus for them, because AJ Lamb, who has been really good at 12, especially defensively, but he's effectively he's come into that position as a winger. I don't think he's particularly well known for his distribution, so I think that could be a plus for the Blues. But then on the flip side, I did see today that Patrick Tuipulotu, the captain, he was carted off the training field with an injury this afternoon, and that looks like it'll probably be some form of game time decision whether he plays, and that would be a big blow, because they're obviously missing a lot of experience as it is. So I would personally, if I didn't have any involvement in this, I would probably stay away. I just think there's a lot of unknowns and sort of uncertainty around this.
Yeah, so I think it was Sportsbet to put that up on the Good for the Game forum, and I noticed it also just before the show. So that could be a bit of an impact, but I agree very much with your comments. It should be a great game. I mean, I'm looking here. This, to me, is one of those games where I might just end up with the other team by 7 or less, because I can see this being very close. I'd be very surprised, really, if either team ran away with it. Just a quick one before we move on. Points line here, 54.5. It's what I would call typical New Zealand derby range. Anything there appeal to you, Nathan?
I mean, no, it probably feels about right. Like, I think it would be under or nothing, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree there, because I could see this being, I see this as one of those games that starts off with maybe a flurry of points and then really, really tightens up after that. Right, 2 games left to get through. We got the Waratahs up against the Brumbies. That's on Saturday, South African time at 10:35. There's been money here. Waratahs, I think they opened about plus 3.5 or 4.5, and it's gone to 6.5. So money for the Brumbies, who have an excellent record in Sydney. Nathan, what are your views on this one?
Yeah, well, they do have an excellent record over the Tars, I think, in general. I mean, I think it shows it there. There's the last 5 in a row. I don't know what it was before then, but it's definitely the last 5. So I like the Brumbies. I was on them last week, and I think any team that has Tom Wright in it are always a big chance. I know the Oracle was a fan of his. He couldn't name any players, but he knew Tom Wright, and and I think Tom Wright he's a name worth remembering, because he is a class act. So I'm not a fan of the Tars, and I faded them last week. But I'm kind of torn here, because when I ran my numbers, I had the Brumbies by 3, and I can't fully explain that. So it's that the Brumbies would have covered that number in each of those last 5. So I think part of the line movement is Valentini being back, which was possibly a little bit unexpected, but at the same time I'm not sure exactly how fit he is. So it's a difficult one. I could, as I said, like that, my numbers are kind of saying Tars, but I don't think I can get there. So it's probably one that I would leave alone. Like, I would need to be getting maybe 9.5, 10.5 to start thinking, about the Tars. But outside of that, I would stay clear.
Yeah, I agree with those comments as well. Just, we got a points line here, 55.5. I see Reverend saying screams unders, but he was referring then, I think, to the Crusaders game, which was the 54.5, which is fair enough. As Nathan said, they're unders or nothing. Here we got a similar points line, 55.5. The Waratahs, I'll quickly just have a quick look. I've put the weather links up there, and let's just have a look at the time I did this yesterday. There was some rain forecast after the game, so I just kind of made the point to monitor it, but it looks pretty clear. And some of these Aussie derbies have been high scoring.
They have been, I think it sort of depends a little bit on who's involved.
Yeah, that's true. You reckon that line's also well set?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at it, but like in my mind, I don't see the Waratahs getting a whole lot out of this. So for them to, I don't see them scoring a lot of points. So I guess it comes down to what the Brumbies can do, and that's where it gets tricky, because I could see that going both ways as well. Like the Brumbies, when they get going, really difficult to stop, and capable of kind of scoring, almost at will. So I feel like I've seen this before, and it could go both ways. So I see the talking about overs on the Brumbies, and I could see that.
Yeah, perhaps overs Brumbies and alternatively unders Waratahs, which I imagine will be about 24.5 points. That could also be the play there. That moves us into the last game. It's the Force up against the Drua. This is a Sunday morning kickoff. Not too bad for South Africans, 8:05. And here we've got Force minus 3.5 against the Drua. And okay, ignore that points line on Bet Exchange. Yeah, see, they got no prices up there. That's definitely not correct. But yeah, let's talk about the handicap. Force minus 3.5 against the Drua.
Yeah, well, it's not 3.5 in most places anymore. But if you can get 3.5 on the Force, I would take that. So I think the Drua, one of the so one of the Drua's kind of big areas of improvements has been sort of around the set piece this year. But like they have rotated out their props, and so they're playing kind of the reserves in that position, and which is something that I don't like to see. And the Force, they've got everyone back that they rested last year, so listed last week. So clearly it was none of those things were injury related. They were just purely resting. I imagine that they probably didn't take the trip, so they stayed in Perth and got fresh. Potentially also it gives them a bit of extra time to prep, because those guys can start looking ahead, especially the brains trust right at 9 and 10, start looking ahead to the next week's opposition and possibly targeting this game. So the Drua, they've struggled in Perth as well, taking a couple of beatings there in the last couple of fixtures. So it does make me nervous betting against the Drua, just because I think we've all seen the kind of strike power that they have, and the ability to just sort of conjure some of these tries out of nothing. But I just think the spot, the kind of the lineup changes, and I think that this is a game that the Force will definitely have targeted. So yeah, I'm on the Force here.
Right, Force. There is, so just to confirm, I refreshed the Bet Exchange page. There is still minus 3.5, but they have got a points line here now of 61.5. Just to also back up your comment, I see PokerBet minus 5.5. So as you say, you can grab the minus 3.5 there, and if you're a Bet Exchange punter, now might be the time to do it, because it's probably not going to last. Nathan, my view on 61.5, and it sounds hell of a high line to go over, but conditions look pretty hot, but reasonable. I actually think this, with the way the Drua play and the way the Force have almost played the season. I mean, I think there were 89 points in the game against Moana Pasifika. I think this could be, if anything, an overs or nothing. What do you think of that comment?
Yeah, that would not surprise me either. Yeah, I just wonder whether you might be better off just waiting if you're playing it live, and if you're fortunate enough to maybe get 5 minutes of no scoring and then just get into it then, because I can easily see this going that way as well.
Excellent. Well, I'm not going to run through any of the URC games, but if there's anything else you fancy on the weekend outside of Super Rugby from a betting perspective, anything you're looking or waiting for team news on that a punter should take note of?
I haven't had a close look at any of these things. I've just sort of scanned the lines. I think the one that sort of caught my eye was Cardiff Lions, and I think it's at this point it's a little bit of a lottery in terms of team selection, because you're not sure who coming back from internationals is going to be rested. But clearly with the Lions, that's not going to be an issue. So yeah, Cardiff is a team that I'm looking to fade just in general. So if they have a few out, the Lions could be interesting to me.
Yeah, that was my initial thought as well. And I know the Lions, I think, are getting one or two players sort of back into the fold that they were missing as well. So I also quite like the Lions. I think the line there 4.5. But let's get back to Super Rugby then. Just to summarize, maybe your strongest play or games that you're looking most forward to on the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's the Force. I think that I would stick with at the moment. As I said, it's not been a week where it's been as obvious as it's been over the last couple of weeks, but that's a play where sort of projected the Force by sort of 8 points or so. So I think there's still sort of clear value there. With the others, so some of them, it's kind of a wait and see thing. So for example, if I could get a better number on the Reds, that would kind of lock me in maybe to that bet. But there's still time to let that run. At times you can, especially if the Lions in general has been moving in one direction, especially towards a favourite, you can kind of wait and sometimes pick up a better number closer to kickoff.
Excellent. Well, that was Nathan, the Mossman, talking to us there about the weekend Super Rugby action. Thanks to the guys who joined us. I said we had a decent live audience, not as much chatting as normal. Certainly, South Africans probably in their car or in their office listening to this one. But yeah, great that we were able to get the show in. Keep an eye on X and the Good for the Game forum. We'll have an announcement about the URC show, which will, as I say, probably take place on Friday sometime. It brings us to the end here, Nathan. Wishing you a great weekend and, of course, a profitable one.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you hopefully on Friday for the URC show and next week for Super Rugby Week 7. Till then, have a great weekend.